76ers, Bucks. Bucks are at home Saturday night. ESPN, NBA on ABC. There's not much more you could have wanted from this game. There's just not. And it's just a great game. It was just an incredible game to check into it, really, at any point. These teams shot the piss out of the ball. Okay. They both shot over 50% from the field, almost over 50% from three, and they were both over 80% from the line. It was just incredible. It just had such great flow to it. There was just a ton of offense. You had superstar play at a high level. You had just, it was combative. It was physical. Two of maybe the most physical and most difficult to officiate players in the NBA. I ranted about the difficulty in, one, playing against, two, being a fan of a team that's playing against, and watching officials try to officiate Joel Embiid when the Celtics played the Sixers last week. And Giannis is right there in that realm. Giannis is kind of like the leader of the tough to officiate group. And so to have those two guys kind of squaring off, it was incredible. It was like two like King Kongs just battling it out, tons of physicality. And it came into play when they were defending one another. You know, think about that call that could have gone either way, the block or charge when it's in the fourth quarter, game's winding down. Giannis just bullies his way into Embiid. Embiid falls over, Embiid's up in arms about, he ran me over. And it's true, he did, but also, it's a call that could have gone either way. And there's tons of that stuff all night. Both of those guys habitually live at the free throw line. And if we're playing against those guys, it's really frustrating. But watching this game, you could tell those two are just absolute beasts, physical specimens. Obviously, both of them are in the MVP conversation. But you think about this Bucks win streak. They come into this game winning 16 straight. Some of those without Giannis, right? They get Giannis back. They have Middleton back. Drew Holiday is playing at maybe the highest level he's ever played at. Just made the All-Star team over James Harden. So when we think about James Harden going absolutely out of his mind last night, we have to think about maybe some ulterior motives and maybe the fact that maybe a little fired up that Drew Holiday made the All-Star team over James Harden. To Holiday's credit, he has played very good basketball lately. My biggest takeaway from this game is that this was a huge win for Philly, right? Philly shows incredible poise, and that's something that they've struggled with. I think this team, since the construction of the Embiid, Harden, Sixers teams, I think they've struggled with identity, and I think they've struggled with poise. Just showing that they can tough out a difficult game, and they did that. And they did that through a Grayson Allen 20-point third quarter. He erupted. The drive and kick stuff for Milwaukee when I'm watching this is just off the charts. When you have Brook Lopez, a 7-foot center, able to get the step on his defender, drive it into the lane, and then kick out to his choice of either Drew Holiday or Grayson Allen on the wings, wide open, that's a problem. That's a problem for other teams. And Philly, give them credit. They adjusted. They found a way to slow them down. Those were the last points that Grayson Allen scored. And scoring for Milwaukee was just a lot harder. Points were a lot harder to come by for them in the fourth quarter. Give Philly a ton of credit because they won this game without Tobias Harris. They won this game without PJ Tucker. Those are kind of their two most consistent wing guys. And give Jalen McDaniels a ton of credit because he shows up and now he's relied on heavily in this game. He's relied on a ton in this game because of the absence of those two. And I love what I saw from McDaniels. His defense down the stretch, he was locked in. He had clutch free throws and a clutch bucket. He was part of that group that just showed tremendous poise, and he wasn't backing down. He wasn't afraid of this matchup. And this is probably the biggest game that Jalen McDaniels has ever played in his life. I talked about it a little bit when they played Boston, but you know, he's coming from Charlotte, where he's just never going to have to play really any meaningful minutes, and then now he's catapulted into this new stratosphere of basketball that he's never been a part of, and that's just high level competitive playoff atmosphere basketball. And he was excellent. He was excellent, and it looks like that was a really good trade for Philly. Still not really sure why Charlotte decided to move off of a really good young player who was cheap. Just not sure. Anyway, James Harden is my personal story of the night. You know, everybody knows he is my favorite non-Celtic. I just love James Harden. He's not talked about enough as one of the greatest scorers of all time, one of the greatest isolation players of all time, just a fabulous player. And he showed it last night. And I don't like this idea that last night was a vintage performance for James Harden. We think James Harden is like a prehistoric, like fossil that was dug up and showed up last night. That's just not the case. I know he didn't make the All-Star team this year. I know, you know, he's kind of been bogged down by whether it's the hamstring or other injuries the past couple of years. But I think the biggest thing with Harden is that the burst kind of comes and goes. And, you know, I still think he's capable of playing like that most nights. You know, maybe not 2018 peak Harden where, you know, he looked maybe a little bit lighter and maybe a little bit more athletic, but I think he's capable of taking 25 shots a night and making a ton of shots and leading an offense. The way he leads the offense now is still extremely impressive, and he has a league high 11 assists a game. He's excellent at, you know, just getting the offense into its sets, getting it into a rhythm, and then finding the open guy. He's a tremendous playmaker. He's an extremely underrated passer. I think he's one of the league's best passers, if we're honest. I mean, you don't get to lead the league in assists without being a tremendous passer. So I loved every second from Harden. There was a point where he was not shooting the ball very well, but when you are missing PJ Tucker, but most notably Tobias Harris, who in that starting lineup, Tobias Harris is really the third option and really one of the only other guys who can create his own shot. And so when you're missing a guy like that, you kind of need Harden shot creation, whether or not they're falling. You know, you'd like to see them all go down, but he needs to be the one putting the pressure on the other team that, hey, I'm here. I'm going to take shots. I'm going to isolate. I'm going to put your guys in mismatches. And he did that. And he did that well. And at one point, the shots started to fall. Once they got into that fourth quarter, you know, obviously in that last minute, he and Embiid hit the big threes to give them the lead. But Harden was just the story for me all night. Just fabulous. They won't talk about it because he didn't get the triple-double. He had 9 rebounds, so he's 1 rebound shy of the triple-double. So, you know, they won't talk about it, but he really was excellent. So was Embiid. Embiid and Giannis. For them, it just goes without saying. It just goes without saying. There's a reason those guys are in the top 4 of the NBA MVP discussion. It just is. One of those guys could easily take this award. I know the MVP award thing has really heated up in the past week. I think there's now like a race thing with it, mostly sparked by ESPN's brightest shining star, Kendrick Perkins. But I'm not going to get into all that. That's just actually ridiculous. It actually just frustrates me thinking about it. But these two are just tremendous talents. And they showed why. But with Philly looking thin, they needed more, and they got more from Harden. I kind of feel like there's room for Harden to do this a lot more often. I know it looked great last night, but think about it. I don't really know at what point we decided Harden has to be a playmaking first all the time guy, because he kind of is that. But if you look around the league, especially, we got Phoenix and we got Dallas playing right now. Each of those two teams has two excellent all-star or all-world players, who are taking upwards of 20 shots a game, right? So this idea that Harden has to reel it all the way back. And I know he still averages like 22, 23 points a game, but I just think there's more room for Harden to dominate, and I know most nights you're not going to have somebody on the other side of the floor who can even hang with Embiid from a physical standpoint, from just a defensive standpoint. Nobody can really hang with him, right? And you want to attack those matchups. I get it. But in the minutes where Embiid is off the floor, Harden can keep this team in it. And we saw that last night. When Embiid hit the bench, Harden is what kept them in this game. And I know it sounds like I'm going on this huge Harden for president campaign, but really, just I think there's room for him to do more. And I think that ultimately, if they're going to get to the promised land, if they're going to make the conference finals, if they're going to win a conference finals, they're going to need more from James Harden. Because of how they were so thin, Georges Niang somehow ended up in the closing group. And I don't know why. I still feel like there's just no way he can do that. And then he ends up with a 5-second violation. And then Rivers, I guess that was enough for Doc Rivers to be like, hey, you're done. Thank God, because that just wasn't going to work. He did end up with 16 points. Don't get me wrong. The guy could shoot, sure. But I'm just not buying this idea that he should be in the closing group. That ties into my thing on Doc Rivers. I haven't shared it yet. I haven't shared my Doc Rivers thing yet, but just you wait. Just an awesome game, and really, really do hope we get these two teams in the playoffs. Biggest takeaway was Philly finally showed tremendous poise. They played really good basketball together, and they survived basically anything and everything that Milwaukee could throw at them. Milwaukee threw everything, including the kitchen sink at Philly, and they were just outstanding.